as we get started, I thought we might make a little kind of have a little recap. So overall picture with the performance bull test, we're planning on uh, we're planning on going ahead. Hang on 1 second. All right. With that being said, we're planning on moving forward with the idea of having a more consolidated bull test. We're going to try to bring more unity with our bull test and have a contemporary group to market and sell. We're going to do that through print advertising. We're looking at spring and fall on doing that. We're going to do that through PX feeders. That does not mean you can't take bulls throughout the year when you want to. Doesn't mean that you can't go do it on your own at other locations that have GrowSafe facilities. It just means that from a marketing standpoint, we're going to try to have a bull test that we can actually market animals through as a group. And that will hopefully drive some sales to commercial breeders. As more information becomes available, we will release that information to you guys on how we're going to advertise, where we're going to try to go find our buyers, and how we're going to make this thing float. Looking at probably doing it no sooner than spring. So as you're planning on what bulls to send or what bulls to look at to send, let's look toward spring 2021 as being our first bull test. With that being said, you guys have heard me mention a time or two GrowSafe. I think everybody's pretty well familiar with GrowSafe and knows kind of a general idea as to what it is. We have a great resource within the Bromvie group, being Mark Nelson. Mark actually works for GrowSafe. So tonight, what he's going to do is kind of give us a rundown as to how we utilize GrowSafe in bull tests and how that data benefits not only the tests, but also kind of makes the parameter for how we market these animals. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kick it over to Mark Nelson, and I'm going to let him be the host here, and then we'll let him get going. So I'm going to make you the host here, Mark.
All right.
All righty, I believe you're in.
Okay. Looking for my presentation. Okay. So Evan, can you guys see my screen? It should be a screen that says Bromvie Performance Bull Test.
We just see you at this point.
Sorry, that's a poor substitute here. Let me back out of that. Share screen. All right.
Now we have it.
Okay. Now you can see it, right?
Yes, sir. We are in.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks, Evan, and appreciate everybody that is on, and looking forward to this. Bromvie and GrowSafe have had a long-term relationship, a very good relationship, and I've had a lot of the benefit of that because I'm both a Bromvie breeder and also work for GrowSafe. So with that said, we've also got a long history on testing cattle for the association, with the association testing with GrowSafe, and also with individual breeders also testing with GrowSafe. Working on my slide advance here. There it is. So I think it's responsible for me at this time to also make a little bit of an announcement for those of you that might not know this. GrowSafe, we're working hard to increase our services. We're merging GrowSafe with Vitelli, who's an industry-leading IVF business, and we're looking to combine elite animal identification with the capability to rapidly multiply chosen genetics. As one company, we offer a combined value proposition for all cattle producers. Sorry, I'm gonna move myself out of the way so I can read my own slide. By connecting precision data capture and insights precision correlation between genetics and performance, and precision reproduction of elite genetic stock. So the new company is called Vitelli. I don't think the term GrowSafe is ever going to go away. I think our technology will probably always be GrowSafe. However, my business card very soon will say Vitelli, and that's the way we'll be known. But within that, GrowSafe will always be the GrowSafe you've known. So some of the colors you're going to see moving forward instead of the traditional GrowSafe green is the blue and the orange. The Vitelli tagline is we make individual animal management possible, helping cattle producers transform decision making and bring a new certainty to performance, health, and genetic progress. So with that said, as far as what does that mean for everybody on this call that's used to the old GrowSafe and collecting efficiency data, really not much. All the current products and services will continue to be available. If you hear something around the industry that GrowSafe doesn't exist anymore and the efficiency EPDs are in jeopardy, that's sure not true. If in the past you've tested for efficiency with a GrowSafe system, nothing's changing there. If in the past you happen to be an IVF customer for Vitelli, nothing's changed there. Any of the people you've worked with in either realm, nothing has changed there. All the same staff is still there. We will look at creating some new offers that where we can combine the two together and hopefully offer more opportunities to reproduce more efficient genetics. That's really the tie-in. Other than that, one or the other is still possible with whatever you're used to doing. With that said, I just kind of wanted to go back for, I guess, just reference sake, as far as those of you that might be watching that aren't that familiar with, sorry, Evan, I got a little deal I got to get rid of there. I don't know if you guys can see that little pop up there. I need to get rid of that, I think, Evan. Evan, I think I'm in control, so I think I have to let people in. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we can't see that. Yep.
Okay, let me figure out how to let somebody in here. One person is waiting. Okay, I think I did it. So with that said, a little history on GrowSafe for those of you that might not be familiar with us. We've got a 30-year history in efficiency testing. And right now we've got 72,000 plus animals, phenotype animals in our database. But if you look at the animals that we've tested, we've never really kept track of that. It's probably in the millions. And every week we test more cattle. So this slide was developed, I think, a month or two ago. So all of these numbers have grown since then. But we're really focusing on what data brown bay breeders can use. So what we're really going to focus on tonight is the network and where that data comes from and how you can add your data into that and how you can use that data. So when you look at the network and the power of the data that brown bay can tap into, on this slide it says there's 21 network partners. A network partner is basically somebody that contributes phenotypic data along with pedigree, which brown bay does as a breed association and as individual members. I think that number right now is 24 or 25 last I counted. 14 countries, I think that number's pretty close to right. 160 total clients we work with. Of those, the 24 I just talked about are actually network clients. We do have another 140 or so other clients that do research or do testing, but they don't share pedigree. Within that database, we've got about 250,000 animals. So when you look at a multi-breed EPD, such as brown bay has access to, it's based on about 250,000 animals. So Evan, when I took control, I let somebody in, I lost the capability to move slides. I might have to reload.
You're actually still.
There it went. Okay. Okay. So a little bit about Vitelli and the IVF process that we're partnered with. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we're talking about efficiency data, but I think it's good to let the Bronve Association members know who their key partner in GrowSafe is aligned with and a little bit of what they do, because it's also important, I think, too, that it might offer some benefits for Bronve breeders in the future if they're doing some ET work. So basically the Vitelli IVF process, in vitro fertilization, it's hormone-free, no daily shots to administer. We can OPU heifers, which isn't something most people are used to doing when they're flushing. You can do that as early as 7 months of age, or basically when a heifer hits puberty. And we can also flush cows as early as 15 days post-calving. And we can do females up to 100 days after a female settles. And we can sex the embryos, or we can use reverse sort on our semen so we can provide you with sexed embryos. We do have a one set price for every embryo. So if you flush a cow and you don't get embryos, you're not out anything. You only pay for the embryos you get. And you can use one straw of semen to fertilize up to 15 donors. If you're reverse sorting the sex semen, I think that drops down to about 5. So those are a couple of selling points. If anybody's interested in the IVF side, there's a little bit of information for you. So the IVF side, there's some numbers. We're in 9 countries, 22 locations where they're collecting embryos, over 125,000 to date, 30 different breeds as far as client base. So you can see that we're partnered with a company that's fairly evenly yoked with GrowSafe, and brings a pretty nice portfolio as well. So if anybody's worried about GrowSafe not being in good hands, we brought a good partner on, and I think we're fairly solid. So I think our efficiency data we're collecting as a breed is pretty sound. So now getting to the official agenda, what I really wanted to visit about tonight, I want to talk some about efficiency and the database and how to test. More specifically, what are the efficiency measures? How do you measure efficiency, and what's the proper profitability of efficiency? So there's lots of efficiency numbers out there, anywhere from somebody saying I've got efficient cattle because they've got a short fat cow and looks really efficient, all the way to different measures of efficiency. I guess I will note from the people that say they have really efficient cattle because they look efficient, that's not really the case. Efficient animals come in all shapes and sizes, and unless you really measure and you know how much that individual animal is eating and compare it with some degree of output, we typically do that with a degree of growth, you really don't know if you have an efficient animal or not. You can say you've got an easy fleshing animal in some cases, but until you measure, you don't really know. So some of the more popular numbers out there when you look at efficiency is residual feed intake, or RFI, residual average daily gain, and feed conversion ratio. So when you look at the differences between the three, and obviously we're going to talk more about RFI tonight because that's the EPD that the Bronve Association publishes with GrowSafe. So RFI, it's basically when you look at the same gain within a group of animals, and you see if an animal is eating less feed, or in some cases more feed. You basically, whenever you look at an efficiency measure, it's really hard if you go over to the right, when you look at your feed conversion ratio, it's really hard to say, all right, from test to test, my animal's converted at this rate. If you really want to compare animals within a test, and then be able to compare that test to others, you need to probably land on either RFI or RADG. Feed conversion ratio is obviously important. It's what feed yards use. But for genetic evaluation, you really need to be settled in on looking at one of the others. But a real key point that I want to make sure that everybody notices as you look at these 3 different measures, they all have feed intake. And really, that's one of the most important things when you measure efficiency, obviously, is dry matter intake. The base of every one of our trials has to do with measuring how much each individual animal eats, and then we compare it to how that animal gains. So at the base of all of these numbers is measuring intake, and then you basically measure against their gain. Oh, I forgot all those really cool little things were there. I should have been using while I was talking. So with that said, what is RFI? RFI is basically a measure of feed efficiency. The way I like to look at it is RFI isn't so much how much an animal gains in comparison they eat. It's more like, what gain did I get and how efficient was it? You can see on the screen here and digest it, the official definition of residual feed intake. The key thing to really remember here is a low number means that animal is efficient, and a high number means that animal is inefficient. It's a moderately heritable trait, which is significant because when you look at heritability of traits, carcass EPDs are also moderately heritable, which puts both of these traits among the most heritable of traits. When you measure for RFI, it's independent of body weight and size, and differences in the trait cannot be detected by looking at animals we discussed a minute ago. So when we look at the different options for measuring efficiency, I like to say that RFI is GrowSafe's and the Brown Bay Association's measure of choice, and that is, of course, residual feed intake. And the key reasons that we do that, selecting for RFI is independent of body weight, size, and growth rate. It doesn't affect mature cow size. It doesn't depend on an animal being smaller or bigger. It's a much more useful trait than that. And it's associated with reduced methane emissions and increased sustainability. And that might not seem all that important, but when you look at the recent Burger King commercial, it was kind of a silly video. It might not be that important to us as producers, what we think about daily. However, when you think about the world and the clients that we have and the consumers that are on the coasts or in other countries, it's a really important trait and it's something that we're taking pretty seriously. The selection of RFI benefits both the cow-calf herd and the feed yard industry, and it doesn't have any adverse effects on other economically viable traits. So you can select for RFI without hurting yourself in any other places. So when you look at the numbers that are behind the RFI EPD GrowSafe has, all of those numbers come out of the GrowSafe Network. And the network is basically the group of animals and breeders that are contributing data into that particular database. So the definition of the network, which the Brown Bay Association is actually part of, it's a forward-thinking group of GrowSafe clients who efficiency test cattle on GrowSafe technology and voluntarily contribute standardized data and pedigree into a genetic evaluation. As the slide I showed a little bit earlier shows 20 plus test locations. Like I mentioned, it's either 24 or 25. We're in 5 countries, 250,000 animals. Interesting thing that I wanted to include on this slide is the average contemporary group in each one of those is about 18 animals, which means if you have a minimum of a couple animals in a contemporary group, up on the top side, you can see that our average is about 18 animals, which makes for nice sized contemporary groups. And we have about 22,000 contemporary groups through that 250,000 animal database, including 23 breeds. The important thing about this database and why it's nice to be part of it is it grows monthly. Actually, every week we have trials that go off and contribute data into it. So I like to say we're a 250,000 animals on our way to 2.5 million animals because it just compounds daily. So what are the mechanics of getting EPDs back? The test data that is made at GrowSafe locations is submitted to GrowSafe by the test locations. If you're curious about who the test locations are, they're on our website, growsafe.com. Most of the cattle right now are being tested at PX feeders, and that's where a lot of the data is coming from currently. However, we do have Brown Bay bulls being tested at Tucumcari, New Mexico, Green Springs in Nevada, Missouri. We've had a few tested at Chapel Feed Yard in western Nebraska. We've had cattle tested at Ridgefield Farms in North Carolina. Some of our historical data is from Midland and Midland, Montana. So in the case of the BAA, the Bronve Association provides a pedigree back to GrowSafe. And so one thing to remember, if you're going to efficiency test your bulls, if you want them to be part of the database, your bulls need to be registered. And preferably those bulls need to be registered with the registration number before they go on test. That's one way to ensure that your data is included in some trials and becoming part of the EPD database. Neogen, who is our third-party provider, does a weekly data transmission and EPD run. The results are returned to GrowSafe and then distributed to the BAA. Right now, I believe we're on a monthly schedule with the Bronve Association to get an updated herd book, be applied to the network database. And we just started that. We'd been on more of a bi-yearly schedule. But as we settle into that, the Bronve Association will be getting RFI EPDs updated monthly. In this case, for the Bronve Association, that data would go to Digital Beef, who includes an RFI EPD on your individual animal pages. So right now with the Bronve Association and GrowSafe, the trait that is included is the residual feed intake. Heritability is moderate. It's run without correlation to other traits. And remember, lower RFI EPD is better, just like lower RFI phenotypes as well. If you're unsure as far as what a good number is or a bad number is, what you really need to look at is the percentile ranking and the accuracy. So if you got a percentile ranking of 1, 2, or any 20 or lower, that means you're in the top 20% for efficiency. If you've got a percentile ranking down 80 or lower, you're in the bottom 20%. And also pay attention to the accuracy. The accuracy will guide you also, because some of the bulls you look at are females as well, might not have much accuracy. It's an indication that that's the direction it could go, but like everything else, without some data, you don't know if you're really getting there until the accuracy gets higher. The Bronve Association publishes RFI EPDs that are 0.1 or higher, so they are starting to get some data. But I really like to look at a bull if I'm going to really consider it to be something 0.3 or higher, and start feeling a little bit better about the data. And usually if something starts out pretty good, it stays pretty good, but there sure can be some variations, so continue to watch that animal. So how do I test it at a GrowSafe location? As I mentioned, as far as the different locations you can test at, and you can sure review our website to see where else might be available closer to you. But like we'd said, PX Feeders is a really nice place to go at this point. And Gayla did a really nice job a couple weeks ago doing a presentation on behalf of PX. And they're testing a lot of Bronve cattle right now. So for a bigger contemporary group, or trial group, that's a nice place to land at. So when you look at the bulls on test and wondering how your data applies. So contemporary group definitions. So groups are formed by test location. So even though we can compare data or EPD animals from one location to another, if you want to have a contemporary group that goes into your EPD calculation, they do need to be tested at the same location. They need to be in the same trial group with the same starting and ending test dates. They all need to either be male or female. We also do have parameters in here that I didn't include, that they need to be within, I believe it's 300 pounds and 90 days of age. So within that trial group, they need to fit within that window. They need to come from, if you want to be in the same contemporary group, they need to be from the same herd of origin. Now notice that there isn't an X by breed, and a lot of people have asked how we can build Bronve EPDs for efficiency compared to other breeds. If you have two different breeds within your own operation, and they're in the same contemporary group, same trial group, then they will be tested and compared to each other. However, if they're at the same test location, same test dates, same sex, then the breed will obviously get differentiated because they're from a different origin herd. The other way that you can build some crossbreed value also is if animals within that breed have a F1 or F2 or F3 kind of a mating. So if you got a Bronvé Angus and that pedigree is included, the Angus pedigree tie-ins will also start tying us to other breeds as well. And it doesn't have to be Angus, it could be any other breed. So just a little bit quickly on a GrowSafe system for those of you that maybe haven't seen it. The picture shows the feed intake nodes. You see the cattle lining up behind it. And with each one of those nodes, there's 4 different troughs there. And you can see at the back of each trough, there's a wider spot in the bars that only allows one animal to eat at a time. So when an animal sticks its head in there, we can read its EID tag. There's a RFID antenna that's around the trough rim so that we know which animal has its head in the bunk. There's load cells underneath each one of those troughs. It measures to a 3-gram resolution, which is pretty impressive, I might say. And the feed disappearance is measured each second. And GrowSafe remotely monitors this process. And for different clients, we provide options for end of trial analytics. And I mention that because if you're going to go to a GrowSafe location and want your data to fit into the network and the EPDs, you need to make sure and visit with somebody like me, or else ask that person if they're part of the network and if they're contributing pedigrees or registration numbers to us on your behalf to make sure that your EPDs come back to you. Then also in combination with the feed intake nodes, we have the option where some locations, and PX has this, where you've got daily weights caught at the water trough. It's a partial body scale where an animal steps up and you weigh the front half of the animal every time it comes to drink. And we catch weights every second, and they come to drink typically 6 to 12 times a day. So we get a lot of weights, and we really nail average daily gain to apply against daily intake. Our data gets pretty robust when we compare daily feed intake with daily weight gain. So some of the different pen layout options for those of you that have been to Green Springs before, that'd be the option on the right where they just have the feed intake nodes. That works. We can collect the data. It just takes a little bit longer to test it using chute weights. The one on the left is like what PX Feeders has. That includes the in-pen weighing system. So Evan looks like says, I need to finish in 10 minutes so they're going to start billing you. I get to see the notifications, you don't. So is efficiency profitable? Do efficiency EPDs work? This graph on the right, we looked at 1,000 sires with at least 5 progeny measured in 2019. And if you look at up the left, that's the sire RFI EPDs. And off the bottom right, that's the phenotype of the progeny. And as you look at those numbers, looking that line going up across at an angle, and then you start looking at the individual animals plotted, it basically shows a really nice trend that basically shows the EPDs and the phenotype of the progeny are highly correlated. That's a pretty impressive data slide when you start looking at it. Should make you feel pretty good about if you're going to test for efficiency and collect the EPDs, then should you use it, because does it transmit? And this slide certainly says it does. So what are the benefits of selecting for low RFI animals, or why should we do that? There's a reduction of overall feed intake by up to 12% while maintaining the same level of production. There's a reduction in the maintenance requirements of the herd by 9 to 10%. If you look at it, you can beat that. We've got some people that are doing up to 20%. And basically, when you look at that number, if you're used to paying a certain amount, putting in a certain amount of feed, you can reduce it by that 10%, and that's basically feed cost savings. Improvements in feed conversion rates of calves from 9 to 15%. That's a feed yard number there, which is also significant. And then we talked about the rest of the world watching some things like methane. That's a pretty impressive numbers as well. So with that, Evan, are you going to open this up so that we've got a live mic and people can ask questions?
I absolutely will do so.
Excellent.
Let me do this. Can you possibly shoot it back my way, or you're gonna have to unmute everyone, I believe.
Okay.
That should be down at the bottom if you want to unmute everybody.
I've got a bar up at the top.
Well,
Evan, why don't I just flip control back to you because I cannot seem to find that.
sure.
So tell me how to give you control back.
Should be down at the bottom as well. Or it's on the picture over here if you click on my name.
Ah, I'll try that. I don't think that did it, did it?
No, sir.
So what's the icon I'm looking for here, Evan?
It should be over by my by my name. If you look at the participants, if you click on participants,
Okay.
all right, you should
Oh,
say,
I see. Okay, so I can go do them individually.
yep. And if you look at mine, it should say make host.
Okay, I'm clicking on Loretta to unmute, but it's not changing. Oh, I found it. Make host. There you go. All right. Sorry about that, Evan. I think you're host now.
Yes, sir. All right, so I'm asking all you folks to unmute there. All right, any questions before we get out of here? Great job, Mark. First of all, thanks a lot for that information. That helped out a lot. It clarified things in my mind for dang sure. So that's a great thing. We appreciate your time. One last round for questions here before we hop off.
So, Evan, there's a couple things that I think that would probably be popular questions if we don't have any from the floor that I guess I'd like to throw out if we've got another minute.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so to me, one of the questions would be, why don't all my animals have an RFI EPD? When you go and look up your individual animals, obviously there's a slot for RFI EPDs, and a lot of times that's blank. And the reason being, until we get enough data within the breed, we want to make sure that the only data that we're showing is pretty relevant. So in the case of Bronve, they've got to have a 0.1 accuracy or higher before they get published. And then probably the other question is, how do I make sure that I get an RFI EPD? I touched on that. I want to reiterate that. Obviously, you have to be testing animals. If you have genetics that aren't already in the database, you can use animals in the database that already have high accuracy, and the progeny will start having RFI EPDs. But the best thing to do is to test your animals and make sure that when you test them, obviously that you have a registration number so that data can flow. I wanted to touch on what's a good RFI EPD and what is bad. Really remember that a negative RFI EPD is more favorable. It's like a golf game. The lower the score, the better. And actually, the more negative, the better. But really rely on that percentile ranking. That'll lead you true to what's good versus bad. And then one of the popular questions is always, how do we prove efficiency compared to other breeds? I started touching on that. If anybody out there has more than one breed, and can make them fit a contemporary group at a trial, that certainly moves things quickly. The other thing is to any chance you get to test an F1 with a known pedigree from another breed, that's also key and starts moving things. And we're also fairly uniquely looking at a multi-breed genomic test. And I think there'll be opportunities for this breed to also move themselves ahead with that opportunity as well. So I thought those might be some of the questions that might come up afterwards. If they didn't come up during this presentation, wanted to readdress those beyond what I did in the presentation. So that's what I've got here, Evan.
Great, great. Hey, I appreciate the time, everybody. Again, Mark, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being a part of this, and thanks so much for being a part of the committee as well. You're a great resource to have on this board and this committee. So, if you guys have questions in the future going forward, this video will be posted. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Mark. Or myself, and I'll pass it on to Mark if you want to go that route. However you'd like to reach out to us, we're happy to help. We're here to help. So thanks for your time. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and conclude, and appreciate the time tonight, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.